Hello, everyone. I'm Krista Moore, and welcome to the Krista Moore Talk Show. This is brought to you by K Coaching and ID Growth. This talk show format is a new way to learn from industry experts and thought leaders as they share their strategies and growth ideas. And I'm very excited today to have our guest. His name is Tim Moore. No relation, just want to clarify that. He's the founder of Generational Insights. And he's pretty much dedicated his career to understanding the generational differences and how that plays out in the workforce. So I'm really looking forward to learning from him along with you on these changes that are taking place with generations and the impact it has on business today. So let's have a welcome for millennial expert Tim Moore. Tim, are you there?
I am. Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Good. It's good to see you. So why don't we start out by you telling the audience a little bit about yourself? That'd be great.
Well, not very interesting, but I'll be glad to tell anybody about it. I've been living in the Research Triangle area. I live in Cary, North Carolina, for about almost 40 years now, and worked for a lot of large companies like Pepsi-Cola or Gillette or Dow Chemical, even L'Oreal for a little bit, and all Fortune 500 companies, always involved in sales management of some type. About 17 years ago, I ventured off on my own and started a sales training company, which has morphed into me working with Generational Insights, which we're the experts in the country on the multiple generations in the workplace and how they think and why they think the way they do, and actually what you should do when you understand that.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to let the audience know is I heard you speak back in January at an event, and I was really inspired by the topic and felt that so many businesses today might not be prepared for this generational gap that's taking place and kind of a shift. What I thought we would do first is if you could start out and maybe explain a little bit for our audience the different age breaks and brackets and terminology that's being used, and kind of tell us about the differences there.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. It's always fun for me, and I can talk on this all day, so I'll try to be brief, and I'm sure most of you have already heard of these things. But right now we have 5 generations in America. The oldest generation, most mature generation that we have, we call them the matures. They're a mix of several different generations, including the GI generation and the silent generation. There's just not many in each of these generations left anymore, so we kind of merged them all into one and call them the matures. But that's anybody that was born before 1945. And the influences they have, of course, you'll know that all of them will say that the Great Depression is a major influence on them, and really ingrained deeply into their psyche of thrift and making do. And they were the first recyclers before anybody ever thought about recycling. When times are hard, you do those things. And also 80% of the families in the United States at that time had someone in their immediate family in the armed forces. So businesses benefited from, after the war, when all the soldiers came home, all these lessons that were learned that the military uses to move large amounts of people and material all over the world. So those groups.
Yeah. And then the next group, I guess, is where we fall in, right, which is the baby boomers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that generation and why they are the way they are?
Oh, we would have to go deeply onto the couch to figure out what this group is all about. But those baby boomers, they were the largest generation in the country. And, of course, they got the name baby boomer because right after the war ended and all the GIs came home, in the next year there were 1 million more births in America than there were in 1945. So there was actually a baby boom, and it sustained for many, many years. A lot of children being raised, and all the impact that had on things like schools and hospitals and just even transportation and things like that. Baby boomers have pushed the envelope their whole life. They're usually the loudest. They're very gregarious. They're very competitive, being from a large generation. This is a generation that has demanded attention, and they are basically running the companies now. They're your CEOs. They're the division managers. Those are the people in most companies now that are running the show. However, they are the generation that's retiring more quickly than any other generation as they have reached that age. The oldest ones are 71, and so we've got about 12,000 a day, every single day, retiring right now.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously cause for concern for many companies. And I remember talking and reading about how this generation, they were hard workers and workaholics, and almost
Yes.
kind of expect that of the younger generation, but that's not necessarily the case. So tell us about Gen X, which is that next group, but a lot smaller.
Yeah, Gen X is the smallest generation in the country. This is the generation that was born between 1965 and 1979. And the biggest factor in where the shift came for this group, where we left the baby boomers and started into Gen X, was in 1964, the Food and Drug Administration approved the birth control pill. And so this generation came from smaller families, and they were raised as their parents' friends. The first generation to ever say their parents were their friends. They were well educated. A good percentage of them went on to college and to advanced degrees. Although they got a reputation because when they got out of college, many of them wanted to take some time off, take a gap between college and their careers, and see things, go hike through Europe or South America, wherever. So they became known as a slacker generation. Probably not the fairest thing. I think they are probably the most harshly judged of all the generations and most misunderstood of all the generations we have.
And then the last generation that we're going to be talking about today is the Millennials. And I think we're going to put more of a focus on that because there's 85 million of them, and they're soon to be taking over a lot of positions within corporations. And I know that the folks on the line that are watching the show are curious how to attract them and retain them and onboard them so that they're successful. So why don't you tell us about the Millennials in general, and then we'll kind of dive deeper into some of those other things.
Okay. Well, the Millennials are the largest generation, and if you think they were known at the very beginning, baby boomers having children, most of them, not every Millennial has baby boomer parents, but most of them do. And they were the soccer moms that were driving around with their kids, keep them busy. They won't do evil things. And this is a generation that was known as the Echo Boomers. Then they were known as Gen Y, and settled in over the last 12 years or so into Millennials, and that's what we call them. And you hear about them all the time. They're the largest generation in America right now, 85 million plus, and they certainly are working their way into the workplace, deeply into middle management, as the oldest ones are now about 36. So you look at that, and between the ages of 1936, you got kids in college still, and you got people that are in the workplace and moving into some management positions. But they are the largest generation, and on not only that, by the year 2025, they will be 75% of the workforce. So if you're not paying attention to this generation, you're going to have some critical decisions to make, and you won't understand what's happening to you.
Yeah. And when I heard you say before about so many, there was a large statistic, I think it was 12,000 baby boomers leaving the workforce every day, and then you have all these millennials joining the workforce and growing within that. I'm certain that there's a lot of dynamics that comes along with that. So I've heard this term, the great generational shift. And what exactly does that mean then?
Yeah, the great shift, and demographers and all the futurists were telling us this was coming for decades. You could see it because you could see how the generations were dropping into place. With a large generation like baby boomers, the shift is that these baby boomers are retiring at an incredible rate right now. They don't give you much time. When a baby boomer decides to retire, they pretty much walk in and say, I think by the end of June or end of July, I'm done. They don't give you much time to plan. And so the big shift that's happening is that companies are losing people that have an amazing amount of intellectual wisdom and knowledge about the industry they're in and the company they work for. And as they walk out the door, baby boomers have always been so competitive, they don't want to share all this knowledge. It's not in their nature to. They're not the best mentors we've ever seen. As a matter of fact, as a generation, they're the worst of all the generations trying to be mentors. And so you take that, and you have this. They're leaving. So what do you backfill with? Well, you're backfilling with millennials. That's where your workers are. They're not getting the best training. They're not onboarding right. A lot of times the methods that companies use to hire and retain were formulated looking at baby boomers or maybe even early Gen Xers, and they didn't think about it too much until all of a sudden now they've got a crisis, and they've got millennials that come to work for them. 25% of all millennials tell us that they will leave their job this year. They will walk away. 33% tell us within 2 years they'll be gone. They haven't stayed around in jobs, but there's a lot of reasons for that we'll discuss later.
Yeah. So I'm curious about that whole dynamic in terms of the shift, and I'm sure that there's plenty of people that are watching the show have an older sales organization or an older sales force that they are recognizing that they are going to need to churn that at some point. Why don't we talk about the millennials in general in terms of what they're looking for from an employee? How do they judge companies or businesses that they are considering going to work for?
Well, a millennial looks at the world just a little bit different than a baby boomer. A baby boomer will look at a company and say, you know, how long have they been in business? What kind of quality products do they bring to the table? And I don't call them older. I call them more mature salespeople and that are looking for jobs and things like that. They really look at the company and say, what do they have that I can get involved with? What's your reputation? Whereas millennials, on the other hand, look at a company and say, what can I get out of it? What's there for me? So they look at companies and they judge companies by these three factors in this order. The first is they judge on your quality of your products and services. What kind of quality do you bring to the marketplace? That's the first thing they're going to look at. Second is, what kind of employee satisfaction do you have? It's important for them to understand that your employees are pleased and happy to be where they're working and they value where they are. And the last thing is, what kind of customer satisfaction do you have? So those are the three items. It really doesn't matter how long you've been in business, and it really doesn't matter, you know, the type of customer base you've built up, because that's shifting so fast for millennials. So it's really about quality, the employee satisfaction, and then your customer satisfaction.
Yeah, so I would imagine then as employers are looking to attract the millennials, there's certain things that they really need to know in the recruiting process, or maybe they have to change their company culture a bit to really be dynamic and attract them. So what would you say are some of the key things that companies should be looking at as far as what's important to that millennial?
Well, millennials, contrary to myths that travel throughout the country, millennials are hard workers. Many of them work 2 or 3 jobs. Maybe their main employer doesn't even know that. But a lot of times you'll find them, you know, as a receptionist in a dental office, and then maybe they're your waiter that afternoon, and maybe they have some kind of a call center job at another time. It's been a difficult. They came of age in a difficult time when the economy was struggling. They've had to adapt to it, but the truth is flexibility is the most important thing for millennial. They work hard, but maybe not in a linear fashion that baby boomers really like to see. You know, baby boomers measure everything on effort. So if they're the managers and they're looking at millennials, they're going, well, he's worked really hard, but it's all of a sudden he just seems like he's not busy all the time. Busy doesn't mean you're productive, and millennials might want to work different hours. We've got a lot of examples going around the country where companies have adjusted to that.
Yeah, I remember you sharing a story with me about a company that adjusted their hours to be more flexible, and it really paid off in dividends for them in terms of their employee satisfaction. So give us some examples of how companies can potentially change their rules or maybe their flexibility to be more appealing.
And here's the key: is you want to attract the best and the brightest, and you want them to stay because the best and the brightest will attract more of the best and the brightest. So a millennial, a company that hires a lot of millennials down in South Carolina that I work with quite a bit, has what they call core hours between 10 and 2. Those are the core hours of the company, and all hands have to be on deck during core hours. Everyone has to be at work, but beyond the core hours, you can come in early. You can come in, you know, early in the morning and leave at 2. You can come in at 10 and stay late. You can come in a little bit early and leave a little bit late. You can come early on a Friday, and so you can leave early, and then you can come in late on Monday because you're just getting back. All those kind of things that millennials are really fascinated and enjoy flexible hours. They don't mind working hard. You can ask them to do an awful lot of things. But the flexibility of the core hours in the center of the day where everybody has to be there for meetings and all those things is a real draw for millennials.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about baby boomers' parents raising millennials, and they're almost pushing back on the way that their parents used to do it. I'm recalling, if the baby boomer's the workaholic and maybe, trying to climb the corporate ladder, and that child may not have seen their parent as frequently, and today their values are different, and that they don't want that. They want to be able to have the flexibility, and they want to work hard, but not necessarily, live for their job. And I guess that's not a bad thing.
Well, the other thing you have to think about with millennials is they're not as loyal to the company as maybe their parents were. They watched their parents go through a lot of layoffs. They watched their parents lose jobs when there was a reduction in headcounts. And for a variety of reasons, companies moved out of the country or to a different region or whatever. So there's a trust thing there, although they don't mind working hard. And they are loyal to good managers, not maybe to the corporate entity, but to the manager they have. They are definitely will do whatever it takes to keep that manager to be, if they like them and they believe in them, they'll stay with them and help that manager look really good. They'll do whatever it takes to make that manager look good so they can stay in the group with them.
Yeah, that's an interesting statistic, because we also know, and both you and I are in the training industry, we know that employees leave, number one reason, 78% of the time, is because of their manager. So when I hear how important that relationship is between the millennial and the manager, I think there's a lot of things that companies can do today to up-level that management style or system to be able to really relate to the millennials and be able to ensure that they are loyal and they're able to retain them. What
Absolutely.
are some other things that you think are good things for businesses to know about millennials as it pertains to what they want, and maybe in the recruiting process? So if I'm going to, for an interview with a company, what am I going to be looking for?
Well, the first thing is that, well, let's just back up just a hair and understand that millennials communicate a little bit differently than maybe their baby boomer bosses or parents. Because millennials, they love their phones, but they hate to talk on them. Text is the main key, and of course they invented social media, so they really do like that social media. Maybe not the same social media channels that their parents use or their boss uses. Facebook seems to be just so yesterday, but they've moved on to things like Instagram and Snapchat and all kinds of others that we could sit here and talk about all day. But understand they communicate differently. Now, if you're talking about what they value and you're talking about an interview, you have to understand the way they see and what corporations and companies for years have always given a list of things that are important to them, and sometimes they have it very backwards, because what's important to a millennial when they walk and the way they want to, what the benefits and the job is, first off, what's the pay and what are the benefits? They're just like everybody else. They want to know. Those are important to them. Benefits especially have become a hot item. Benefits and different ways to structure those have become very key for millennials. Of course, they want to be leaders. The number one reason that millennials leave your company is because you're not preparing them for leadership positions, and they feel like they're underutilized. They're very highly educated, and they're not getting opportunities. They feel like, you hired me in and you got me just sitting at a desk doing work a monkey could do, is what they'll tell you. I could do that. Anybody could do this. You could train an animal to do what you've got me doing. They don't see that they're intellectual, they're not intellectually challenged at their job, they sometimes feel.
Yeah. Well, and so that being said, what would you suggest then that employers do, say, at the interview process to make them feel as though they're going to be set up for success and, that they're the employer of choice, so to speak?
Well, I think you better be ready to answer the question of exactly who your customers are. You have to be very open and honest about the condition of your company, what kind of technology you're using. Millennials are drawn to technology like a moth to a light. They live for it. It's like water. It's like the air they breathe. And if you're not in tune with those kind of things, you're probably not going to have the the best of the group come work for you. You have to adjust their also the interview process has to be a little bit different. You have to ask different questions, and some of those questions are that you're trying to figure out exactly what they value. So you can ask different kinds of and explore different kinds of ways to during the interview than you would maybe for even a Gen Xer, but certainly if you ever interview a baby boomer. These are not your traditional interviews. So baby boomers always just talked about the job and how they're going to get paid, whereas a millennial's talking about how will this affect me, how will I benefit from coming to work for your company. So you better be able to shift and talk about what they're going to get. They're going to get trained. They're going to get all the opportunities that you have for them.
Yeah. And I think, too, kind of the proof points, right? Really showing them, here's our complete training program, and here's the succession
Absolutely.
for your career. And I know in just interviewing some interns that are in the college age, it's really interesting what they're wanting out of an employer, which is very different from maybe an older generation that's kind of looking for a home, so to speak.
Right. You better have the first 6 weeks of your training program laid out, bullet pointed by day, of what they're going to learn on those days. Who's going to be training them? Are they going to have a mentor assigned to them? Who would it be? What would that structure look like? They want to know all this because their whole life has been structured like that as they grew up, and so that's what they're searching for, is somebody has a plan for their development. And if you don't have a plan, if you're going like, hey, we're going to bring you on and you're going to work with Joe, you're going to do a ride along. Well, tell me what I get out of working. What I'm supposed to be searching is I work with Joe and that ride along. I want to know what's the next day look like. They want to know. You better have it laid out and be able to show them a training manual and who's doing the training and how you're reviewed and all those things. They want a complete picture of what training looks like at this company.
Yep, and I like the idea that you said about assigning a mentor.
Mentors are vitally important.
I was going to ask you, what tools should businesses use to advertise and recruit? Where do you see the millennials kind of hanging out, so to speak, for where they would look for jobs?
Well, millennials have huge social circles. Their friends are all over social media all the time talking to each other, and they've got channels that most companies don't even know exist. So social media is going to be a key part of this. If you can find a really good worker to come for you as a millennial, and you got the best and the brightest, they're going to tell others. So one of the things you have to have is a good social media campaign that promotes the people you've got that are doing a good job, maybe almost like as if an advertisement or a feature on, we hired this wonderful young man to come work for us, or this young lady that's working for us. They have, this is their qualifications, they went to school here, they do these things, and we've assigned them to so you do a feature on them with a link on social media that people can look at. It's almost like you're using the people that are working for you and doing great to get the next one to come. That's one place, but there's all other places too, and I would also say that a really good in-tuned person that's that can help place people with you, that can pre-screen, because millennials are fed up with job boards that they send in resumes. They'll tell you, I sent in 80 resumes over the last week. Not a one of them ever responded to me. So they know that doesn't work. So they quit responding to the ads because the ads aren't effective, because nobody ever tells them if you made the cut or not. Somebody gets a call, but nobody else even knows how long the process is, because companies have quit having the etiquette of telling people whether they're in consideration or not.
You know what that makes me think of too, Tim, is companies themselves in preparation for attracting millennials probably need to look at their company image and their brand and what is being seen socially, because those millennials, before they go to the interview, are searching them socially, seeing what are they, a bunch of old fogies, or what kind of, are they antiquated, or is that the right culture that I want? So I would just kind of throw that out there. Have you seen companies address that as
Absolutely.
part of their plan?
Culture is important, and I'll tell you why. Because these millennials want to know how happy and satisfied your employees are. So they're going to dig in. They're going to find somebody that works there, or they're going to find somebody that knows somebody that works there, and they're going to do their research. They're really good at it. They can bore in. They're going to check all kinds of ways that people have given satisfaction or unsatisfactory ratings to your company as they left. You know, people that are not feel like they haven't been treated right or have been told false stories will spread. Bad news spreads faster than good news, and they'll look at those boards out there, those blogs, all those places where people rate your company, and they'll get an image of your company.
Yeah. So I learned something today, which was there is a stereotype, I think, about millennials, that they always need a trophy, they're difficult to deal with, they're not loyal, they're not hard workers, and I think that that is a stereotype that maybe we kind of need to get over. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we have to be very careful with stereotyping any generation. You know, everyone has things they like, and everyone has biases, and you have biases because things that work for you a certain way, or you've had success doing them, you fall back into that because it's comfortable and you know you have the better chance of being successful. But when you get into the stereotype area, be very careful, because, you know, one size does not fit all. And you can't put a blanket over all millennials. Yeah, there's going to be some slackers, and there's going to be, all generations are slackers. They all have a group of them that didn't see the world the same way. But by and large, what we see with millennials are they are hard workers. They are the generation I honestly feel that's going to pull America back to the place that we all think it should be, to the status it is. This is the generation. They're large enough, they're bright enough, they're well educated, and they're going to take us to a new place that maybe we forgot that we were.
Yeah, that's great. So I love this conversation, and I almost feel like there's a sense of urgency about this generational shift and the need to really be prepared for it. So I'd like for you to leave us with, say, 4 or 5 must-dos.
Sure.
If you were a business owner today, what are some must-dos to prepare for this and to kind of get on board?
Well, the first thing is look around your company. What are the ages of the key people, their managers, and all those that people report to? Get some type of understanding of who's going to be leaving and how long. You know, you better have an idea, because, like I said, baby boomers don't give you much time to prepare and bring somebody in to apprentice with them. They just walk out. So be ready, understand the impact it's going to have on your company. But I'd say the second thing is reevaluate your benefits and all those incentives that you have for bringing people on, because you know what worked for baby boomers and Gen Xers will not. It has no impact on a millennial. They really don't care about your 401k plan right now.
Yeah. I remember you mentioning a benefit that one of the companies you were working with that had to do with mileage. And why don't you share that? Because that's one small little shift that could make a big difference.
Absolutely. There's a company right here in the Triangle that hires a lot of millennials, and their goal is to hire the very best, and they will attract more of the very best. And one of the things they do is they pay mileage from home to work and back every day. And I was talking to them, and I was kind of perplexed. And I said, you know, the IRS doesn't count that as business mileage. You can't write that off. And they said, we don't care, because what it does is it separates us from all the other people that are trying to hire millennials. And when the people that work for us are sitting out on I-40 and it's backed up and they can't get home or to work that day and they're feeling frustrated, they know in the back of their mind they're getting, you know, the 53 cents a mile to get here and back every single day. That is a huge differential between them and other companies. So a benefit doesn't have to follow everybody else's idea. New ways and incentives and benefits for millennials. You have to be creative, and they do help you. They will then bring more of the good ones to you.
Yeah. So what about a third point that you think would be helpful?
Make sure your management team understands the shift. If they don't understand the shift, they're probably going to fight it. But once they realize what's happening, that the company's success and their success depends on what the shift, how they see the shift and how they embrace it and what they're doing to prepare for it, they'll run with you, and make sure they understand it clearly. And I think another one is understand that all generations, not just millennials, they're hot right now, everybody's talking about them, but you know, baby boomers and Gen Xers, they bring great value to your company. And so all generations bring value, and understand what it is, and give incentives for those people to bring their best to you. So don't just focus on millennials, but all generations are there. And the last thing I would say is you better be prepared to protect and harvest all the intellectual wisdom that's going to walk out your door. Look at who's going to leave this year or next year and start harvesting it right now and preparing that you don't have to rebuild the wheel and reinvent all the systems that you had, because the people that did those prepared them and walked out the door with that intellectual knowledge. Have them mentor people. Have them prepare the things that made them great for your company when they leave.
Yeah, that sounds great, Tim. I really appreciate you kind of bulleting those for us. And just a reminder to our audience, if you want to share this video with someone that might have missed it, as Tim had mentioned, to keep your management team informed and kind of embracing these changes, you can certainly go to the Krista Moore Show website and listen to past recordings, and this will be posted out there as well. But before we hang up, I want to share some information. Tim, maybe your contact information, email. Is it okay if people can reach out to you?
I talk to people every day, and I love the calls. So the more of them, email's great too. I like it all. Hey, even text is great. I go all the ways. So okay. Are you going to share the information? You want me to tell them how to get all of it?
We're going to go ahead and share it now.
Okay.
So your company name and your email, they can see there.
Right.
So they can certainly send you a message. But I want to thank you, Tim, for joining us today. It was a great show. I appreciate you being a guest, and we'll stay in touch. Take care.
It has been a pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Great. See ya. Thanks. All right, so it was great to have Tim today. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope you did as well. So mark your calendars for the Krista Moore Talk Show. We are doing this every third Wednesday of the month. We have a lineup of great guests. And remember to go back to the KristaMooreShow.com website so you can register for upcoming events as well as listen to all the past ones. So for July 19th, I'm going to be interviewing AJ Titus, and he's from United Franchise Group. He's a young kid that's just like on fire. I'm looking forward to him sharing with you what it means to be your own boss. AJ is a third-generation entrepreneur, and his father's company is one of the largest franchise companies in the world. So he's going to talk about pros and cons of entrepreneurship and also the whole franchise world. So I look forward to that. Just know at K Coaching, we care about you and we care about your success. We'll see you next month. Thanks.